Okay, well, welcome to the Emergency Plan by Black Swan Outdoors. If you're not familiar with Black Swan Outdoors, we're a blog. We blog every Tuesday. We have a Tradecraft Tuesday post. So that's oftentimes spy skills. We try to take the skills that spies and espionage skills that are used abroad to help keep America safe. We try to take some of those skills and give it kind of a civilian perspective and kind of use those skills to keep people safe. So we also talk a lot about emergency preparedness and preparing. And so today we're going to talk about kind of building the emergency plan. And we have a booklet which you can download off the blog, www.blackswanoutdoors.com. And in that booklet, you can print it off and fill it out and cut it up and fold it up, laminate it if you want, and you have yourself a nice organized emergency plan all ready to go. So why would you want a plan? I mean, I think like anything else, if you put a little bit of forethought into something, you're going to reap better dividends down the road. And so when we're planning for emergencies, these are things that we hope never happen. We hope that, forest fires and earthquakes and hurricanes don't happen, and they specifically don't happen to us. But unfortunately, the way it goes, that there's always going to be trouble. There's always going to be a natural disaster or some kind of regional issue that's going to happen. And I think having a little bit of forethought in how you're going to react is going to help you. Now, it's not going to necessarily mean that you're going to react in that certain way. As we might know, if any good plan goes to shit real quick and you have to kind of improvise or whatever, but at least you have a starting point. So this booklet is kind of that starting point. It's that first point. You don't have to do anything else in emergency preparedness, but if you put this booklet together, you're going to be I think you're going to have a pretty good start on your preparedness journey or wherever you're at when it comes to emergency preparedness, depending on any level that you might be interested in. So this is the cover of the book. What we want you to basically do is, write down your name on this book. Everybody in your family or your mutual assistance group or, whatever kind of group it is, should have this booklet. And you should have your name on this booklet because obviously they all look the same. You don't want to confuse them. And there's going to be some opportunity to personalize this book according to you. And then also with that, you'll be able to use, kind of putting together a group plan. So you'll be mimicking some of the stuff that other people in your group is going to do. At the very top where it says household name, you could put your name, your surname on there. You could put, your group's name, whatever you want on there, but basically it just kind of shows that affiliation. So to create this emergency plan, it's 3 steps. The first is with your family, you're going to want to do is get everybody together and start discussing how you're going to respond to specific emergencies. Now, you don't have to put together a PowerPoint presentation or anything like that, but you could certainly just get people together, have a conversation about what are you going to do if you're out, at work, or if you're out and about in the community, and how are you going to respond in these specific things? So if you're in an area that might be tornado prone, then this is something you might want to, focus on, or forest fires or hurricane or whatever. The second thing you want to do is you want to utilize or use the advantage of being in a group. And so you can take and look at some of the things that might need to happen in responding to that emergency and give people some responsibility on what they can do or what they're supposed to do. And even if you've got like little kids, their responsibility could be to grab their emergency pack and go to a rally point. Make it very simple. Or their responsibility is to grab, their favorite toy or whatever it is. But the idea here is that everybody has something to do. Give everybody something to do, and they're all working for the same kind of, end result, essentially. I think oftentimes in the preparedness community, you have this one alpha male who has to dictate everything that happens, and nothing happens on a mutual level. And that includes how children and or spouses are involved. So you see a lot of bug out videos, for example, where people just make a bug out bag for themselves, damned to be all the the rest of their family. Um, and 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 so there's a lot of individualism that's focused in this, and kind of dictatorialship in terms of how people are going to respond. They want emergencies to happen so that they have all the keys and the solutions to all the problems, and it gives those individuals a lot of power. And so we have to stay away from that. We have to kind of work together as a group. And then lastly, really, no plan is ever going to be good unless you've actually enacted this plan, unless you've actually practiced this plan out. So, meeting people at rally points, how to egress out of your house in case there's a house fire, how to mobilize your group or team or family together. All of these things that we're going to be talking about today, you actually need to do is practice them, run them through. So set aside one night so you can talk about and plan this stuff, and then take another night to actually do these things. You can even go a step farther and say, hey, guess what? We're gonna have a little fun this weekend. We're gonna shut the power off of the house. You don't have to physically do that if you don't want to, but we're not going to use electricity. We're not going to use the plumbing, and we're going to see what it's like to live 2 days in a grid down scenario. And how are we going to respond? How are we going to be able to transport ourselves, communicate, get the generator running, get the flashlights going, kind of do a dry rehearsal so you know exactly how you're going to, what you're going to do, how you're going to react, and kind of tweak those plans based off of something that's actually been run through. So when we get into the book here, your first page here is going to be your personal information. So when someone opens up the book, they're going to see, okay, this is the picture of you. This is what you look like. This is your home phone, your mobile phone, your hair color, address, work address, that kind of thing. And so you have kind of your personal information, and then with that, then health and medical information that you feel comfortable putting on this sheet. So that people have an idea of your medical conditions, doctor or pharmacist they can call in case they have questions, allergies, blood type, that kind of thing. And then we're going to get into kind of family information. So everybody in your family is going to have a photograph, and then some of the same information on there, so that you can show a picture. So say you're looking for a lost brother. You can open up your booklet and you have a picture right there where you can show somebody what that your brother looks like. And this is going to be really helpful for a myriad of different conditions or situations. So you have kind of that basic information about each other and your group or family. And then what we want to do is we want to PACE plan kind of our emergency destinations. PACE planning, PACE standing for primary, alternate, contingency, and emergency. So we're going to break down our response, like the locations of responses. So, at home, do we have a safe room, somewhere where we're all going to congregate, something that we can fortify? We could talk about that fortification in a future presentation. Or is it going to be a designated rally point outside of the house? So for example, you hear a bump in the night. How is your family going to react? Well, it might be that you are all going to go to the youngest person in the family's bedroom if you think there might be a home intruder. The idea being that everyone that's capable, the older people, can actually make the So then what you want to do is you want to have kind of an in-state or in-area contact person. You want to have a photo of that person. Maybe it's someone you all know. Maybe it's somebody you kind of know. Maybe it's an uncle that you don't see all the time. Whatever it is, you're going to have that information that you need to have about that person, how to contact that person. And then also I would add a security word so that if you're not familiar with that person, you're going to say a security word. And if they know what you're saying, then it confirms their identity. So you could say, you know, I don't know, my dad's eyes are brown, and if he responds with no, they're green, then you know that this is the person. This is the person that you know that is supposed to be in contact with you. Only that person would know that specific response. You can come up with anything that you want really for that. It's just a matter of just being able to remember this. The SAS, the Special Air Service, they use for their secret codes, they use oftentimes a number system so that, and you say a random number and it has to add up to 9. So you say 4, that person says 5, the other person will say 5 then in response. So okay, so if you're part of kind of a mutual aid organization, then you're going to want to have kind of one person who's designated as your contact person, your leader, whomever. But you're going to have information about those individuals as well in there so that you know who you can go to or who you can rely on as well. So this could be group, formal group, informal group. These could be friends from church. This could be a Boy Scout troop. This could be, you know, a friends group. Whatever it is, you can kind of create that. If you don't have that as well, so you have kind of mutual aid in any kind of emergency preparedness. And then you want to have some kind of out-of-state person that's emergency contact. So if you're a regional area, maybe there's a big forest fire coming through and you have to leave the state, then you have somebody who you can rely on out of the state as well. Now, emergency contacts are really important. And I think it's nice to have some things. These could be like a tree service to call, a place to kennel your dog, gas station, find out, hey, do they have gas or not? Neighbors, extended family, things like this. We have actually a whole emergency contact list of people that you should have in your phone and kind of also printed out, as well as kind of as extra handout to help you with this kind of thinking about some of the emergency numbers that you should have already on your phone as well. But remember, you want to make sure you have this stuff printed out too, because in an emergency, a lot of times phone systems go down and you don't have power on your phone. If you don't have power, you don't have those numbers. You don't have access to those contact numbers. So you want to make sure that you also have that kind of redundancy in place. Now, we also include a wallet card that you can cut out of this booklet and slip into your wallet or pocket, or in your bag or whatever. But basically it has your name, your phone number, your address, indicating any kind of medications that you have, your blood type, allergies, kind of basic stuff that if something were to happen to you, someone could pull this out of your wallet and get some basic information about you. And then stuff for yourself on the back would be, a location where you're going to keep your Go Kit, right? So this is so you can, if someone has to get your emergency bag for you, they know exactly where to go. And then your rally points, a regional and a local rally point, your emergency contact person, and then the phone numbers, contact information, and then any other information you think you might want to put on there. So that you have this card with you. Now, certainly one of the things that you might want to be planning out, and you could do this on a different day, is coming up with different escape routes. So ways in which you're going to leave your area, your community, your neighborhood, your city. And so you want to be able to know where are the rally points that you're going to rally or rendezvous. So where are some key places, in town, out of town, things like that along the route, so that other people in your group can meet up with you at those particular points. But basically, it's a starting off point, a mobilization points, things of that nature. And then one thing you might want to consider too is, where is a gas station or gas stations along the way? So if people are running to the local gas station and you just need to get on the road, what would be an alternate gas station that would be along the way that you may need to rely on? And then, like we've used with the individuals to confirm contact identification with security words, you could use pro words, which are going to represent the ways in which how you're going to react. So someone might say, banana, and banana could be a word that you're working into a sentence that would mean danger. Okay, so like, boy, I'm hungry. Do we have any bananas, Mom? And bananas might trigger then with your mom to know that, hey, there's something wrong here. There's some danger, right? Or maybe you hear a knock at the door and your mom says, okay, kids, go to the den. But the den really means the safe room. So the person outside the house, if they overhear it, might think that their people are going to go into the den, not knowing the kids are going into an area to be locked up. Or maybe you're on the phone and a tornado is coming and you can say, go to, go to Rally Point Sierra Tango, I don't know, whatever. And then that would be a good, indicator for everyone to go to that first destination or that specific rally point based on your plan. So one thing we have to keep in mind is that we have to kind of work with, the local media and local officials. Evacuation becomes necessary. Local officials will notify the public through public media, text messaging, phone calls to homes, even sirens, things of that nature. Your family or your mutual assistance group should also determine your own means of evacuation. So you should have your plan in place, but know that you need to follow the direction routes of the emergency services as well. So they might have information that you won't have, such as a bridge being out or electricity or something on the road. And if you don't adhere to their suggestions, you may find yourself getting trapped or worse. So you want to be able to be flexible as well in your plan. So just because your plan is to go down this particular road, things might change. So you need to kind of have that real-time intelligence in what's going on. So listening to your radio, phone if it's working, TV if it's on, that kind of thing. And then one thing too that I know it's hard to do sometimes, and a lot of people say they do this, but keeping your gas tank, at least if not a quarter, keep it or if not half, keep it at a quarter full, so that you have a little bit of gas to go. Even if that means storing some gas, a small amount of gas, in your garage or somewhere that you have access to, so that you could fill your car. That might be also something to consider, but try to keep a little bit of gas all the time in your car. Right? Not a quarter, a half tank is, might be a little much. If you drive a lot, a quarter tank might be better. But the idea here is that you don't want to be caught without any gas, so that you can respond to whatever you need to do. And then also, even if you don't plan on leaving, you're going to shelter in place, your car can provide, some emergency warmth or electricity, charging a phone, or even putting an inverter onto the battery and running extension cords into your house for some temporary light and whatnot. That kind of as a makeshift generator. And we'll talk more about that in another presentation. So just keep in mind that just because, you might not need the fuel for transportation, you might need it just for your own particular safety in terms of charging the phone for communications or whatever. So one of the things when you do get your family together is to talk about your room and your house plans and kind of your escape plan in your home. And so kind of looking at your home, knowing where fire extinguishers are, the smoke detectors, CO2 detectors, knowing where the gas shutoff is, how to shut off electricity safely, things of that nature. So you kind of have an idea of where to egress out of the home and then where to go to specific places in your house. And then you're looking at that plan and you want to keep all these areas, these strategic areas, free and clear of clutter so that you can get out that window or you can access that circuit breaker. But you want to be able to get outside of the house, help everyone get outside of the house that needs the help as well, the dependents, the pets, the things of that nature. And you should really practice this twice a year. I would suggest practicing once at night and once during the day, or practice it once in the winter and once at the summer. That way it's not only refreshed, but you also have different kind of scenarios in which you are practicing your egress through. And this really does make a big difference when it comes to home safety from like a home fire scenario. So there's plenty of things that you need to do when we talk about fire safety to help make your house more safe. This list here are the kind of the biggest no-nos that the fire departments see all the time. You know, making sure that your cooking areas are clear from from towels and anything that could kind of catch on fire. Making sure that the pots are turned back, the back of the stove when not cooking. Create a 3-foot kids-free zone around the stove. You could put even duct tape or tape down on the floor and say that this is a no-no zone for the kids, that kids cannot be in this area when mom and dad are cooking, for example. And that's going to help make a big difference of keeping the home safe and also the kids. Space heaters are a huge source of fire. So you really want to limit their use. Same with candles, making sure that you blow those candles out. Even emergency situations, a lot of times people resort to candles, which is fine. Just keep in mind that if you accidentally set your house on fire in the middle of emergency and all the fire trucks are responding to accidents and other things that are going on, go check on your CO2 or your carbon monoxide and smoke detectors to make sure those batteries are nice and fresh. Flammables like gasoline, kerosene, things like that need to be in safe containers, certainly outside of the house in a properly vented shed. We'll talk a little bit about that, storing some fuels in another presentation. And then also making sure that your house number is clear and visible from the street. This is something really, really important. And I think a lot of times people forget about how important this is, because when emergency services, whether it's police or fire or EMS, need to find your house, if they can't find the number, it might take them longer to be able to get to you. So making sure that that's done. That's just a big pet peeve. Some of these are the big pet peeves for emergency services. Before or earlier, we talked about kind of knowing the different locations of where your utilities are. And I think that really having the ability to teach people how to properly shut off electricity, for example, is really important. keeping a flashlight near that breaker box, keeping things away from it, certainly good, and making sure you're not standing in, water. I found a really cool device which you plug into an outlet, and I think it's made by it's branded by the American Red Cross. I'm not sure who makes it, but essentially, if the power goes out, once the power goes out into this little flashlight, then the lights turn on. So when the power goes out, I can put these in different outlets that lead me to my breaker box. And so it kind of turns into like a night light, so that I can get to the breaker box. So I have one right above the breaker box, and then one above the stairs leading me to the breaker box. So if I did need a flashlight, for example, I could just pull it right off the wall and have a handy flashlight. So I have two essentially flashlights that I can use because I have two of these devices. But to get to the breaker box, I have also a lighted path. So it's kind of a multiple use thing. I think they're super, super handy. Turning off gas and propane. Natural gas is something that you don't really want to mess with. So you don't want to practice turning that off. Know how to do it, but a technician has to come out and actually turn that back on. We're talking about propane, especially if you own your own tank, and that it's not really a big deal. But still, just maybe if you don't actually physically do it, you just kind of go through the motions of how that, where the valves and things of that nature are, and how to do that. If it takes a special key, for example, to do it, having that tool available, or wrenches, having those available. Water shutoff was big as well. We saw a lot of this with the Texas incident. A lot of people's houses froze and were damaged because of burst pipes. Mainly, and a lot of people was just they weren't able to shut it off at the main, or they didn't know how to shut their water off. So their house became ruined very quickly by all this frozen water. So, certainly mark this with a flag or some kind of reflective tape or something, so that the flashlight can find it very quickly. And then I would have a backup wrench as well. I've had situations myself where in an older house the actual nozzle rusted off, so we weren't able to turn off the main water. So you want to make sure you have a backup available, so have that wrench there as well. So essentially, yeah, know those utilities, know those things. A lot of times people forget about that. As far as important kind of records and personal information, I think that's really important. We have a whole list of important personal documents that you should have ready to go in case of emergency. You could have them, the hard copies in a plastic bag in a fireproof and waterproof safe. That's always nice, or some kind of waterproof, at least some kind of waterproof case if you can, or a bag. And then have it all backed up if you can as well, scanned and on a flash drive that's encrypted. We have we have directions on how to do that. You can print off the list, and below there's directions on how to do that. The other thing, we do also have our inventory lists that you can use and print out and use on the website. But if you could just take your cell phone with the camera, turn your camera on, and just walk around the house, and that is going to be huge to be able to show the insurance company, yes, this is the TV, this is the refrigerator. If you can zoom in on serial numbers, you can do a home inventory super fast with just your cell phone. And so taking pictures or doing video, again, get those serial numbers, get the makes and models of the different stuff. That's going to make a big difference. So certainly then you want to keep that on an SD card with your other files if possible. So this is just a list of some of the vital records. Again, we have a handout, so we don't need to go through this whole list here, but these are some things that you might want to think about, having those backed up and having it maybe in a separate, safer location, maybe even in a safety deposit box. So money. So not only vital records are going to be important, but also having some money. you know, I think, you know, to me, and everybody's going to be different, but I think $1,500 in cash is probably a pretty good number. It's a, you know, the likelihood of your home being burglarized may dictate whether you want that kind of money, or maybe you want to put that money in a safety deposit box versus having it at home. But I think cash is king in an emergency. When credit card systems go down and you need to make some emergency purchases of food, water, supplies, then I think having some cash on hand is going to be good. You know, so the rules of supply and demand is supply dwindles, or, you know, in an emergency, a lot of times people become very predacious. So lumber prices are going to go up if you need to buy plywood to, you know, seal up a broken window in a home or whatever. So have cash on hand. $400, you know, is going to get you, that's going to get you a flight home pretty much from wherever you're at in the country. That's going to get you money, or that's going to get you food and a rental car, and a hotel room, for a night or two. I think that's quite a bit. It's also not so much that it's super painful if it's stolen or lost, but hopefully that doesn't happen. But cash is really, really important, I think. So if you can afford to have this kind of money set aside, certainly do. You can always, you know, you can always put it back in the bank if you don't need it, or after an emergency or whatever. But I would suggest that. I would also suggest a credit card that has, you know, a limit on there that's available at least $1,500. Again, that you could kind of charge instead of jumping into cash if that's available. You know, you could think about things that you might want to barter with, but really, honestly, I don't think that, I mean, people like to talk about bartering, like precious metals, silver, things like that, but cash is king. You know, cash is it. The other thing you could do too is you could bury money and or valuables and things of that nature, and, you know, do a buried cash. That might be something that you could consider doing too. In the future, we will do a video on caches and how to bury a cache. You know, I don't know. There's pros and cons with that, and, you know, I think if you feel comfortable with it, go ahead and try it. Okay, so some basically, taking you know, some things that you might want to consider is taking some first aid course. You know, getting some basic first aid done. Have a basic first aid kit at home. Every home should have a first aid kit. And then go through with your family how to use the fire extinguisher. It might sound pretty simple, but when you are in an emergency situation and you losing dexterity, for example, or you're not thinking straight, things kind of get a little, you can fumble. But if you've actually done something before, that kind of muscle memory is there, and I think that's very helpful. So it might be advantageous just to buy a fire extinguisher, and, you know, have each one of the kids or family members, you know, put out a fire on the barbecue outside, and just to practice with it, same make and model you have at home. Know that also that there's different types of fire extinguishers, different types of fires too. So if there are specific types of fires that you need to be kind of thinking about, then you might want to make sure you have the right type of fire extinguisher as well. In this packet, you want to make sure you have pictures of your go bag, where, you know, what it looks like. So if you have to tell somebody to get your go bag, you can show them what it looks like. Like we talked about before, making sure you have pictures of the shutoff valves for your water main and gas. And then pictures of your rally points, so you can show kids, you know, this is the fire extinguisher that we're meeting at, or this is the telephone pole that we're meeting at outside of the house in case there's a fire, or whatever that is. So having those pictures, I think, is really, really important. Now, we talked a little bit before about communications. We have a whole different communications organization for those that are really into communications, ham radio type communications. So we have a signals operations instructions that goes much deeper into into preparing your communications than a simple communications card like this. But this might be something handy to have. So you have, essentially frequencies. That's going to be your primary, your secondary, and a tertiary, and then you might want to put in like a weather frequency or simplex frequency that you could be talking versus repeater frequency. We'd have our pro words again that we talked about before, and then we also have on the card here is your the latitude and longitude of rally points, of where maybe a cache might be, different destinations, and pro words are to represent those locations. So I need to go to rally point, A, that could be Bravo 1 or whatever it is. And then you want to put in some kind of details on your route or cache location. And again, we'll go into more detail on these things later as well. This is the Wilderness Protocol, or the 333 plan. Basically what it means is that on any radio, turn it to channel 3, and every 3 hours for 3 minutes, you're going to try to communicate. So this helps save battery in an emergency, but also kind of creates kind of a schedule of when people could be potentially on air that may or may not be, or that hopefully may be able to help you. And so right here, this is all of the bands that are participate, or these are the different bands that people identified to help participate in this. So from ham radio to CB to MERS and family radio service. So everyone kind of has the same idea of where they can get help using radio communications. So one thing that you could do is you could have a radio set aside designated, for a family member that may not be familiar with radio instructions, and have, maybe it's a kid or somebody who's not really all into it, or maybe you're not all into radios that much, but you have a radio to communicate in case of an emergency, and that's totally fine. But having some kind of written instructions will be helpful so that you know how to use it. So a lot of times people buy the radios, like this particular radio in this picture is a Baofeng UV5R, and it's a very inexpensive, about $30 radio you can pick up on Amazon or in many places. And it gives you the ability to listen in on radio communications, ham radio communications, as well as other channels, other frequencies, weather, and things like that. And you don't need to have a license to listen, but you do need to transmit. With the exception of an emergency, anyone can talk on ham radio in an emergency, or any of the frequencies. And so if you're not skilled or trained in how to use this, having some instructions written out to how to do it, I think would be very important. So in here, this is just an example. So turn on your radio onto channel 1 every 3 minutes for 30 minutes, hold down the button and talk and announce your name and speak for 30 seconds. And you'll find that there are very, very helpful people in the ham radio community who, if they can, they will help you, and they do put up emergency nets to do that, and do radiograms to get information to people. So very handy in an emergency as a kind of a contingency. Now, earlier we talked about a go bag. This is kind of very personal on what you might want to put inside there. Certainly you're going to want to have that cache we talked about. You're going to have those vital documents that we talked about. But then you might also want to consider water, maybe food, a small first aid kit, flashlight, a cell phone that's on a different network that you could use, so that if your main cell phone doesn't work, you could try the other cell phone. Maps or GPS with the different locations you might want to go. So there's all sorts of things, weather radio you might want to consider, maybe Mylar blanket. There's tons of things that you could put in there. Change of clothes could be important. Whatever you feel that would be really important to have, kind of your main things that you rely on, things that you really need to have with you. This is supposed to be a small bag, not a comprehensive pack, just something like a small backpack that you can grab that's lightweight, highly mobile, and give you some capability. And we can go in more detail on the go bag, and there might be different types of go bags for different types of scenarios as well. Your vehicle could has a capacity to hold some more gear, some more helpful things to have on there. So you might want to consider throwing in some food to keep in your car, maybe a blanket, the regular kind of car stuff like jumper cables and tools and shovel, winter preparation type things you might want to have in there. But whatever you maybe don't have in your go bag that you don't have room for, put in your vehicle. And most likely in a situation you might have access to your vehicle, or it might be in your vehicle in an emergency situation. But know that also that things like tornadoes, a vehicle can get smashed by a tree, can get blown away, can get subjected to flooding and hail damage. So there could be some limitations on storing too much stuff in your vehicle as well. And also, if your vehicle needs to be abandoned and you leave all that, you'll have to leave all that gear behind anyway. So hopefully this was helpful, just kind of get you some thoughts on how to kind of prepare your family or your mutual assistance group in your preparations. As I said, we have a lot of kind of supplemental information that you can download, this plan in itself, and some of the other forms that we talked about, all on the website at www.blackswanoutdoors.com. I really appreciate your time on this. If you like this presentation, like it and subscribe. And as I had been alluding to throughout the presentation, we go into greater detail on the blog and in video here on YouTube on many of these different subjects. So please leave a comment. Let me know if you like this presentation, if you want more like it. I'd be happy to do that. Thank you.